Thank you very much. I'm delighted to kickstart this conversation, kind of a follow-up, right, of the keynotes from Minister Lemke. The global imperative for a circular economy, when we shaped the session initially, was a perspective. Now, this imperative is a daily issue, right? But very, very concrete. It's about heating, about resources, and so on. That being said, the issues linked with circular economy, right, are complex, intersecting with a lot of different dimensions. So today, for our panel discussion, we have two opening series of remarks and keynotes from Stintje Veldhoven, welcome, Madame Veldhoven, and Alexander Bonde. Stintje Veldhoven is the Regional Director for Europe of World Resources Institute, and Alexander Bonde is the Secretary General of the German Environmental Foundation. And then we will move towards our panel discussions with the participants who are here, and a dear colleague, Mukti Schmoin, sorry, apologies for the pronunciations, from Indonesia, and the co-chair of the T20 task force on circular economy, among other topics. Stintje van Veldhoven, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here today. It's a real pleasure to also see so many familiar faces on the stage. It's an honor to speak among top circular economy thinkers at this wonderful event, and thank you also to the Global Solutions Summit platform for bringing us all together. I would, of course, have loved to join you in person there. I saw the vision of the room, but I'm happy that at least this virtual presence allows me to participate today somehow. Because the circular economy has actually been on my mind for quite a long time. I think it was about 9 years old. Picture me with two blonde ponytails and jeans and rubber boots and lying in the grass of our garden watching the sky. And I was wondering, does anything ever leave the earth, come to it, or not? And it turns out that about 40 years later, this question remains very relevant. Apart from a little helium, a lot of solar energy, and the occasional meteorite, nothing has been added. If anything, we have sent valuable materials in orbit, where they now circle as potentially hazardous waste. But yeah, let's not get into that and return to Earth. My point is, as you all know, but as so little people seem to be actively aware of and acting on, that this planet is all we have. And that means that we will have to deal with it. But we're way off track to stay within all of the planetary boundaries, including our use of materials. Our production and consumption patterns are root causes of our climate, biodiversity, and pollution crisis, and of migration of millions of people. On top of that, the current geopolitical situation is likely to make it harder to find solutions. All the more reason why this discussion today is so crucial. We have to act. And I have two messages for you today. First, Europe is key in sparking a behavioral change. And second, if money makes the world go round, then let's use it to make it go our way. So why is Europe key? Europe is key, for example, because it's actually disproportionately using available resources in the world. And yes, the footprint of an average US citizen is larger, but is that really the excuse? While driving the most ambitious climate policy in the world, Europe also exports a lot of its CO2 material and biodiversity footprint to other parts of the world. And that will have to change. Because today, 8 billion people use the equivalent of nearly 2 planets to provide the resources we use and absorb our waste. This will increase as we grow to a population of 10 billion people by 2050. How many planets do we need? We only have one. Even a 9-year-old can figure out that this is unlikely to change in the near future. So it just won't fit unless we adapt our production and consumption patterns. Not just for ourselves and our well-being in Europe. We actually owe it to the emerging economies to change the way we produce and consume, so that they also have room to grow, to bring their people out of hunger and energy poverty, while we all together stay within the planetary boundaries. Europe needs to reduce its footprint for climate, for nature, for equity. Europe is key because if there's one continent, and I firmly believe that where people are starting to face this reality, it's here. We've already made good progress in climate and circularity, but we still have a long way to go and we need to pick up speed. And that's how I come to my second point. How do we pick up speed? Well, if money makes the world go round, let's make sure it goes our way. Finance plays an important role in steering where money goes, facilitating new business models, both the developing and the developed world, and in supporting the greening of supply chains. Money talks in public procurement. It's evident that money talks throughout the supply chains. And money talks by steering finance to new business models. So how do we make it go our way? A creative example is the shadow pricing in public procurement in the Netherlands. In any quote sent in for the construction of, let's say, a bridge, the company is also required to outline the CO2 intensity of the proposal. The amount of CO2 is then converted to a fictive addition to the overall price, allowing for a true comparison of cost, favoring the use of less reused or recycled materials. And not only does money talk in governments to procurement, but also in supply chains reaching across the globe. And I hope you will forgive me for using another example from the Netherlands. I haven't visited too many great companies in my years in government. Once, with actually our king, I went to a small family-owned business that only sells 100% circular work clothing, ranging from beautiful suits to sturdy jeans. They made the fabric with their old partners in Turkey, the mill, and Pakistan, the weaving of the fabric. And those companies would not have changed their practices without the articulation of demand through the supply chain. But with it, they did. Now we need financial institutions to recognize, learn, and finance circular business models on a larger scale. And we need the EU to come forward with ambitious product policies to drive change across Europe, but therethrough also across the global supply chains. Before concluding, I also want to present you with a challenge. Many emerging economies currently depend on the export of their natural resources. And so the idea of a circular economy and Europe resourcing itself sometimes makes them nervous, thinking it will lower the demand for what they have to offer and depend on for their economies. So our challenge is also to find new models that make money talk for emerging economies, that will enable them to reap the benefits of their natural resources for their development over a longer period. For example, by keeping ownership over their raw materials, leasing them out as a service. If we can partner with emerging economies to make them leapfrog our wasteful linear model, to implementing circular business models that are good for people, climate, and nature, we will all win. There are untapped opportunities in that field, and I would like to challenge the audience to debate this some more. Again, here, with our historic ties to Africa, I feel that Europe is uniquely positioned to lead the way. And with the Team Europe initiatives, we could also do it at scale. Because scale is of the essence. If we want the consumption of 10 billion people to be more equitable, good for climate and for nature, we need to come together. We need to come together, avoid fragmentation, and increase scale. And there's good news as well. Circular economy is now more and more accepted as a key solution to achieve the climate goals. Leaders are coming together to drive change in the circular economy space. Think about the One Planet Network, the African Circular Economy Alliance, the Latin America Circular Economy Alliance, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, WRI Relevant Initiative, and of course, the Platform for the Acceleration of the Circular Economy PACE. If we want to achieve greater impact together, we need to connect and align our diverse efforts. Global platforms like PACE can align them, creating synergies between sectors and leveraging the ambitions of leaders into action. We can support collaborations between governments, businesses, and civil society and academia to agree on policies and regulations. And for this, also organizations like the World Circular Economy Forum and the World Economic Forum do great work. We need to incentivize circular value chains, remove barriers, and scale best practice. We all agree we need to double circularity every 10 years. And we know no one can do it alone. So I would say, as a co-chair of PACE, let's team up and speak up at the next COP to show what we're doing, to make our circular voices heard, and to listen to developing countries on how we can team up. To conclude, let me repeat again, Europe is key. Europe can play an incredible role with its product policy and change dynamics in the markets into a demand for secondary materials and demand for different designs. Since money makes the world go round, let's make sure it goes our way. And let's look up at the sky every now and then to realize that this planet really is all we have and act accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. In fact, you already answered the only question which I had, is this call for doubling, right, the development of circular economy, and use that in the context of the preparation of the COP27. So thank you very much for mentioning that. If you would allow me to turn to Alexander Bonder, the Secretary General of the German Environmental Foundation, for another series of opening insights and remarks. Alexander, welcome. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. And let's talk about resources. We are constantly in contact with a lot of resources. For example, nickel, palladium, and aluminum. We carry them around all the time. For example, in every cell phone like this. And at the same time, a significant percentage of these materials emanate from Russia each year. To give an example, Russia accounts for around 50% of nickel on the world market. And the unprovoked, illegal and cruel attack on Ukraine by Russia has resulted in extensive sanctions, and rightfully so. And this has created ripple effects, not only for the European energy sector, but also for important streams of resources. This plays into the larger issue of resource extraction and why implementing a circular economy is a must for the future. The global extraction of materials has more than quadrupled since 1970 and is still growing every year. Standing today, resource extraction and consumption is expected to double by 2060. And the ecological costs of this cannot be underestimated. The minister mentioned it already. In fact, more than half of the global greenhouse gas emissions, as well as more than 90% of biodiversity loss and water shortages, can be traced back to the extraction and processing of materials. We are approaching the natural limits of our planet at breakneck speed. Additionally, several elements in the periodic table are in danger of becoming scarce in the next 100 years. This compounds with strongly varying recycling rates for different elements. Some elements like indium or gallium are both becoming rare and have a recycling rate below 1%. We will need solutions for that. This leads us to the economical side of things. We are convinced that economics and sustainability can go hand in hand. But this requires decoupling economic growth from resources and decoupling negative environmental impact from the use of resources. A circular economy can be the answer to many problems. You see, my smartphone does not only contain nickel, palladium, and aluminum. In fact, practically half of the periodic table can be found in this one small device. Now imagine how many different supply chains go into a single product like this. Creating a circular economy, therefore, also means having a more resilient economy and being less dependent on others. When resources can be recycled and reused, there is no need to extract new ones. To make this work in action, we need to take all parts of the life cycle of a product into consideration, starting with the selection of materials, the design. Circularity must be a principle. In my example, I should be able to repair and replace different parts of a smartphone, like the battery or the camera. And as sad as it is, this is impossible with most phones currently. And that's not only due to my personal lack of skills. At the end of the use phase, the different parts need to be separated and recycled in the highest quality possible for new use. This will only be possible if the product is designed for that in the first place. But the changes cannot only be technical, but have to go further. Optimization has limits. Fast fashion, for example, is and will be unsustainable. And in order to slow it down, consumers must exercise their influence and alter their behavior. This can include business models like products as a service. We need to support a mind shift in society, and we need more transformative knowledge. That's the way to fully close the circle. And there's support. For example, as we learned through a survey we did last year, the majority of German citizens support a mandatory deposit system for cell phones. The idea behind it, you have an incentive to return your old device, so your device gets properly recycled instead of collecting dust in a drawer somewhere. As German Federal Environmental Foundation, we have introduced a new initiative called ADBI Economy. We are committed to support the transition through funding for projects, startups, and young scientists. We consider circular economy a key concept on the road to a more sustainable and resilient economy. Additionally, it offers great opportunities for small and medium-sized companies as well as for innovative startups, because it enables them to establish innovative products and business models with contributing to closing the loop. Let us strive for a win-win-win situation that paves the way for sustainability, not only in all economic sectors, but also in society and in everyday life. Because we need not only a circular economy, what we need is a circular society if we want to create sustainable growth and jobs, if we want to break free from existing dependencies on raw material suppliers, and if we want to reduce pressure on natural resources. For this, we will have huge benefits in our fight against climate change, against pollution, and against loss of biodiversity. To make this possible, we will need decisive action by governments globally, nationally, and locally to create guidelines, regulations, and incentives to push us forward toward this goal. To put it in the terms of global solutions, circular needs to become the easiest, the best, and the most profitable solution. And I hope on good debates and results from this year's conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe just one question. You have insisted that it should be also about creating opportunities, right, through the development of circular economy. Maybe you have in mind, other than the smartphone, innovative projects or business models that could be shaped by the development of circular economy? No? I don't know. Alexander, can you hear us? No. All right. So, Alexander, thank you very much. If we connect again with you, we will get back to this question. Now, I propose that we continue the conversation after those very, very important insights with our colleague from Indonesia, Kuki, the co-chair of Task Force on Governing Climate Target and Energy Transition of the T20 Indonesia. Is Kuki online? Yes. Hello. Welcome to Berlin and to the Global Solutions Summit. You have heard today with Minister Lemke and beforehand yesterday, and there is another session also today on circular economy, how much this matters. How do you envision the issue of circular economy as the co-chair of the T20 in this year Indonesia G20? The floor is yours. We don't hear you. Cookie, you're maybe on mute. Or the system, can we please unmute our colleague? Please go on. No? Right, Cookie. This will be solved. We will get back to you. We will get back to you in a second. No worries. This happens all the time. Can anyone help our colleague with solving this sound issue? Ingrid Gabriela Hoven, you are the managing director of GIZ, and the issue of circular economy is obviously an important topic in the context of GIZ. something that comes out all the time is about policy innovations to accelerate the development of circular economy, not just projects. So what kind of policy innovations would be needed to accelerate the development of circular economy?
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for having me. And this is a very exciting moment for me, because those of us sitting here in the room actually who have been working on circular economy issues for quite a while are happy that this is now prominently put on stage again. So, yeah, well, we have learned a lot about the case of action. So it's clear we have to scale up activities. But how could we do it actually? So one issue certainly is we have to move the money around, as Tintje said. But how are we going to do this, and why is this necessary? Well, so far, what is obvious is that actually, especially in developing countries and in emerging economies, that still investments in the circular economy is being considered high risk, because it's not perhaps the usual type of investment that takes place. So we need policy innovations actually to make sure that we can de-risk investments and that we can existing innovations scale up in a speed that is necessary and try to provide a platform, a good ground for new business models. So the instruments actually are at hand. For instance, we can build up loan guarantee schemes for investments in circular economy. We can speed up public private blended finance mechanisms that are available but perhaps not so forcefully used for circular economy investments. And finally, public entity co-investments that would actually reduce the risk of the private sector. On many fronts, I would like to add that also some kind of technical assistance is needed in the preparation of new investment in this field. Because technical assistance, for instance, the financing of feasibility studies, of first actually approaches, can actually lower the risk being perceived by the business sector. But this is not the only thing that we have to address, Nicholas. What we observe right now, when it comes to the implementation of circular economy concepts, we see a lot of policy fragmentation in developing countries. And if this continues to be so, there will be not the right framework put in place so that business see the long-term perspective to embark on circular economy approaches. So we need a strong political commitment to circularity and to carbon neutrality. And then this is like the big guidance that is needed. More specifically, when you look then at the very specific policy instruments that you could use, of course, first, what is needed is support to developing countries that they can harmonize their own standards and regulations to the new, so to say, worldwide standards, especially when it comes to circular global chains. Here, the international cooperation can help to advise partner governments on ways to deal with, for instance, new EU regulations, trade agreements that may perhaps first be perceived as a trade barrier, but at the end, if you can embark on these new standards, it provides you with a new edge on competitiveness and new opportunities in the market. Second point second entry point is very important, are market-based policies and regulations to make circular business models more competitive and to internalize externalities of such a policy instrument, for instance, is extended producer responsibility. What does it mean in practice? Is that producers are being made responsible, for instance, for take-back and recycling of products or packaging. So this actually internalizes costs of waste and provides additional incentives, but it requires actually active policy action. And of course, on the other hand, one also has to invest in on the other side to reduce actually the cost of waste management. And finally, one can, as a policy innovation, can think about creating new policies in markets so that actually circular products get a stronger position in the market. This may actually be done by eco-design regulations or quota on the use of recycled materials in products. This can be done by sustainable public procurement regulations or the innovation in promotion schemes are also very important instruments that governments can use to facilitate the creation of new markets and products. And finally, especially for developing countries, and I will close with this, I think what is so extremely needed right now is that more knowledge is being shared about what kind of, so to say, innovative and economically viable products are already available. So the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of best practices, the sharing of how technologies can be successfully embedded into the specific framework conditions that developing countries have to deal with. I think this is desperately needed. We have to scale up these activities by the platforms that are available and move, by doing so, actually the activities of emerging economies from the linear economy into the circular economy. It has started under the G7 and G20 presidency in the past, but what we still see, what is needed is a more comprehensive approach that incentivizes actually this long-term investment into different type of economic action by all actors in society, the private sector, the governmental sector, but also civil society. The consumers have to be brought on board to make it really a reality.
Thank you very much. When I was listening to you, I was thinking about many things, and if we have time, I would like to get back, especially to the issue of circular economy and the SDGs. I think it's a very important issue. Just before, I think we have managed to solve, thank you very much, the technical problems with Cookie. Just let me mention, you were calling for knowledge exchange and capacity building and so on, right? This session, all the discussions we do have in the Global Solutions Summit this year, right, are also the result of Circular Economy Solutions Dialogue supported by GIZ. This session was prepared with the Asian Development Bank Institute, and Linda Archer is here, and she was, in fact, the inspiration and the brain behind the preparation of this session. We have also issued a call for action, which is online, which I invite you to support, of course. So there are plenty of ways, and we do feel this energy to move forward, right, with circular economy, especially with the Global Solutions Summit becoming a crossroads of so many pathways and influences. Cookie, circular economy, G20, T20, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicholas, and sorry for the glitch earlier. Yeah, I think as already mentioned by previous speakers, the importance of this circular economy for every country, right, basically. So, and especially in this recovery post-pandemic time. So if we can have, a much better circular system like circular economy, and also this how do you call it, more resource efficiency. But if we are talking about resource efficiency, I think we have some tendency to see it from the raw materials only, but in fact we also need to deal with the energy, and I think this is where the linking with climate change will come up. Because right now most of the energy are still fossil. So we need, for having this circular economy, we also need to have energy transition, right? So we need to transitioning from fossil based to renewable energy. But having the transition, we also need circular economy to be implemented there. Because if we are talking about, and I think Alexander Bonde earlier also mentioned about the need of reuse and utilize especially the how do you call it, the minerals for renewables. Because for example, if we need to have renewable energy appliances, then there are quite a lot of rare earth materials that you need. And if we don't have a circular economy or circular system there, then you're going to spend all the resources that very, very valuable. So for countries like, for G20, I think, as already mentioned, especially for the emerging economies, so that we, like the energy economies, will not exploit nature and environment too much, then I think what we need is not only to talk about the production side, but we also need to talk about the consumption side, because at the end, like consumption in a way will drive the productions. So I think if we are talking about G20, then this kind of interaction also needed there, to see how like demand for certain materials already in a way embedded in it, has the circular economy element in it. So yeah. And in T20, because you also asked me about T20, we also have a number of abstract coming in, because our approach is of course, like from those abstract, then we will basically develop a policy brief. So we have some abstract to be developed as a policy brief that related to uh, circular economy, including one interesting area I think is on circular economy of battery. So because now if we are talking about renewable electrification for everything, then battery will be the key element. So let's see how we're gonna come up with the policy brief from that side then. So I think I'll just stop there, Nicholas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for the techniques to be well performing. One issue that came across the talk of the minister earlier on, and when we prepared, I remember extensive discussions with Linda Archer. She was saying, which was said also today, circular economy is kind of the other half of reaching out to the Paris Agreement, right? And there is a lot of untapped resources for governance, finance, etc. About finance, Michael Zimoni, you have been in this field for many years. How would you qualify the investors' perspectives on circular economy? Do we need new standards, or does this have to be under everything which is linked to sustainable finance, for instance? How do you view the issue of circular economy within investors' outlook?
Thank you. A great question. And
yeah,
hopefully it's working. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Go on.
So thank you very much for having me, and it's a great question. It's important to realize that even from a pure traditional investment perspective, profit and loss, this issue is becoming material, and the word we use is material, material to enterprise value, the value of a business. And so the way investors look at this issue is from a perspective of, well, from two sides, frankly. One is managing risk. If you look at, for example, these days we talk a lot about the healthcare sector. Waste, medical waste is an especially expensive resource to be disposing of. So not only are you throwing away valuable resources, you are paying through the nose to do so. Innovation in this space is then in turn an opportunity. So if you are looking at the materials in there, and if you can generate a profit from there, as a business, you profit, but also you pass that benefit on to your investors. So this is one way of looking at it. Of course, there are investors that are more interested, of course, in the sort of other contributions to the SDGs and other elements. But even if you look at it from a very conservative perspective, this issue is becoming very much material. The work that we are doing at the IFRS Foundation is to develop a global baseline of consistent, comparable information that companies report to their investors. And this is a really important element. Having a standard where the investment community can receive high-quality information it can trust from the businesses that they are investing in on whether they are looking at these risks and opportunity. Are they looking sufficiently? Are they reaping the opportunities? Are they managing the risks? Is essential. So this is really the perspective the investors are taking. Some of this work is already implemented in certain standards. One of the standards that we're incorporating are the ones by the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and the examples around medical waste that comes from actually one of those standards. I would add to that this is still a nascent area, specialist investors might be looking at this, but a lot needs to be done to bring it to the foreground.
Thank you very much. We will get back to that in a second. Beatrice Luz, you're one of the champions, right, of circular economy in Latin America, or at least in Brazil. We mentioned COP27, which is coming up. Gabriela Hoven mentioned development cooperation. Another agenda, which is more celebrating what happened in the past, right, is Rio plus 30. This year is the 30th anniversary of the Rio Summit. And we can see throughout all the reports in the discussions that we have not overperformed, right, in a number of domains. So how would you look at the issue of circular economy when you need to engage public sector partners, private sector partners, civil society, and create those much needed networks and advocacy?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Nicholas, for the introduction and for being here. It's an honor to be here sharing some of the work that we've been doing to accelerate the transition in Brazil, working with private engagement and public bodies to leverage the transition. But before I start, I want to bring some numbers to bring us into the perspective. Brazil is 23 times bigger than Germany in terms of geographical space. Population size is almost 3 times bigger. The average income per person in Brazil is about $8, and in Germany is about $47. And the GDP per 1,000 inhabitants in Germany is 7 times higher than in Brazil. So we have a very different perspective, a different context, and a different reality. But what I've learned from working for the last 7 years and with all this knowledge exchange with Slovenia, the Netherlands, and Germany, is that government, industry, and the society, they all want the same thing in all countries. So we are talking about governance, economics, and what I've learned, especially from the former Minister of Environment in the Netherlands, Jacqueline Kremer, in order to get all of these actors to work together, because we've listened many times that circular economy is not a job that we can do alone, is building business coalitions. So she created the role for the transition broker. So as an independent organization or independent individual that can connect and get all the parts of the value chain, the entire value chain, to work together. Large organizations, small and medium enterprises, we need to gather all of them into a common agenda. And I think what we've learned in Brazil, we developed the Circular Economy Brazilian Hub in the beginning of 2020. And 3 key learnings we have as an insight. First of all, technology is only one part of the discussion. We need to create the market pool. Business have to understand that in order to close the loop in the materials, we need to have a residual value there. So this is the only way to get the economics, to get the materials to enter in another cycle. The second thing is to understand the unusual connections. So the problem from one sector can be in another sector. So we need these multi-sector and multidisciplinary teams. And this was the biggest learning of the Brazilian Circular Economy Hub. We managed to engage 16 companies, solution providers, large organizations like commodity-based companies, you know, the metal producer, Gerdau, Electrolux, Nespresso. So global organizations that need to adapt this discussion to the Brazilian reality. And the last thing is about finding the right economic balance. So we realized that we need to expand the boundary of analysis. So it's not just about a new financial instruments. It's getting different questions. So if we are financing a energy solar plant, we also need to ask what's going to happen with the solar panels. Is that any business around ready to fix the solar panels if it breaks. So we need to create this assessment based on new boundaries. And when it comes to public bodies, we are having discussions with the state of Rio de Janeiro, and it's about governance and economics again. So we are assisting them to get 3 secretariats to work together: the Treasure, Economic and Development, to design public policies together, because as the minister said, we need to develop this common agenda. And this is what we hope that in 2024, when Brazil is hosting the G20, we can have lessons to share with all of you.
Thank you, Beatrice. So we have heard very strong voices from Brazil and from Indonesia. And Ingrid Hoven, maybe as we are reaching out, I would say already, the end of this very short tour de table on the circular economy imperative, you mentioned development cooperation, and we can see that it's not just about technology, but also about technology. How would you say, getting back to the point of pushing for circular economy in the Agenda 2030 could be a way to foster a common ground between emerging, lower income, higher income countries for circular economy?
Well, I think this is an emerging trend, and I wouldn't say that there is perhaps many very good avenues to achieve the SDGs, but I would dare to say that implementing the circular economy approach in a way that all stakeholders are on board may be really the silver bullet, because we have learned actually the circular economy transformed the whole way we are doing business, the whole way that we are living, the whole way we are consuming, and it respects nature. It's in line with the respect of nature. I think a key ingredient was just described by Beatrice. You have to forge a consensus in society really to turn around the needle. Cooperation, actually, international cooperation, can provide partners that would like to pursue this way, really in consensus building, and to bring the right policy instruments in place. And additionally, I think why I'm more optimistic than 10 years ago is that we have now actually at our hands digitalization. Digital tools can be so instrumental to implement the circular economy approach, because it provides more transparency and provides some opportunities for scaling up new approaches. So I would say yes, we have to intensify cooperation in this field, always on the basis of a consensus forged within society. This is absolutely the key ingredient.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all keynote and panelists for this session about the global imperative for circular economy in this edition of 2022 of the Global Solutions Summit. With this, I suggest that we wrap up our session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.